it's an interesting thing is because I read the top 100 list and everyone's got their opinions, and I respect everyone who puts the work in to evaluate prospects. And yet there's a disconnect at times. We've seen it through the years. And I think Juan Yepez is an example of that because, he doesn't pop up on any of the top 100 lists, the sort of third party, nationally known top 100 lists. And I'm not saying that people have done something terrible by not putting him on there, but sometimes the team actually does know more than independent evaluators, and based on what Yepez has been able to do, and I always mispronounce his last name, he seems like a guy that might be that overlooked prospect in terms of a national appeal. So, why do you think he's been overlooked, though? I find it really interesting.
It's a great story. Traded for Matt Adams by the Braves to the Cardinals for Matt Adams. And he was so young at the time. He was 18 years old, and he didn't hit right away in the organization. And he's not one of those kids that's bursting with athleticism. He's not Mason Wynn. He's not Trajan Fletcher. He's not Jordan Walker. And he was even less that as a teenager. But he worked on it. He got stronger. He got bigger. And he struggled a little bit at the beginning. And I think that was the first step. And then national outlets, it's really hard for them to keep up on the guys who maybe fly underneath the radar, or the guys who fall into obscurity just a little bit, because you're talking about systems that back then had 250 people and now are down to 180 and maybe even down to less than that after the next collective bargaining agreement. But I think that has a lot to do with why he flew underneath the radar. His story is awesome. In 2019, he did not break extended spring training with an affiliated club. He stayed back, and it was a really dejecting moment for him. And instead of letting that moment eat him alive, he let that moment create and define his character. So in 2019, before we had the 2020 shutdown for COVID, Juan Yepez starts the year at extended spring training, and then finally gets a sniff, finally gets a chance to prove that all of the things that he was working on, all of the questions he was asking that were getting answered, all of the rededication to fitness and diet and his body and his mindset at the plate was paying off. And we started to see a little bit of a breakout in 2019. There were some high exit velocities to go along with a respectable stat line and some booming power. And then, to be honest, the answer to how come so many of these guys are flying underneath the radar, I believe, has a lot to do with losing all of the minor league season in 2020. I can't imagine how tough it is to be an evaluator on a national stage, or even other teams, or people like myself. I can't imagine how tough it is to try to recalibrate after a lost 2020 season. And he's kind of an unusual guy. He doesn't beam of all that athleticism. He's just a really great player, and that's not to take away from his athleticism, but it's just to say that it's not like that typical what you would look for, and usually what ends up being shoehorned into like a top 100, top 150 list. So I think all of that has contributed to him being underneath the radar.
And Kyle Reis with us, and we're talking about Juan Yepez. And how do you say it, man? Do it for me again. I'm being an idiot.
I say Juan Yepez.
Yepez. Okay, thank you. I'll do better with that. Anyway, I'm intrigued by him for a lot of reasons. In no particular order. I mean, clearly the front office, John Mozeliak, all of his people, including the minor league director Gary LaRocque, they're in love with this guy. It's obvious. You don't put him on the postseason roster. That wasn't just an empty thing, an empty gesture. I mean, that was a very meaningful thing. He would have played in the postseason had they advanced past the Dodgers. And, actually you can wonder why the heck Schilt didn't even, use him as a pinch hitter. So, but the other thing is that, it doesn't look like he's a platoon bat, because he, on two levels last year and most of the season spent at Memphis, he basically clobbered, right-handed pitching and left-handed pitching. In fact, was better against right-handed pitching. Not that he was anything wrong with his performance against lefties, but he's a right-handed bat. And you think there would be a bit of a platoon split there. There really hasn't been. the other thing, what do we talk about in baseball all the time? We talk about too many strikeouts, plate discipline, doesn't have it, blah, blah, blah. This guy's got a really healthy walk rate, and he's got a really attractive strikeout rate, as in it's not very high. And so you look at him, and obviously I'm not ready to put him in the Hall of Fame, but you look at what he's been able to put on paper, so to speak, and you're like, well, isn't this kind of like exactly what we all hope a hitter should be? And so I'm really excited about him getting an opportunity in 2022. And I know you're fired up about him because I read your work on him, and it kind of got me even more fired up. So do you believe, I'm setting it up on a tee for you, do you believe, Kyle Reis, that he's the real deal?
I think that you did a great job earlier in your show bringing up Alan Craig. And the real deal is such a tough question for me to answer. I'm always a little bit more cautious about,
right.
But I think that like he's an Alan Craig type hitter. He does have defensive deficiencies that maybe Alan Craig didn't have, especially when Alan Craig first came into the league. But I do think that you're talking about a player who's going to walk, once he gets to the majors, between 8 and 10% of the time, who's going to strike out between 18 and 22% of the time, and who's going to come up in the clutch with some key hits. One of the things we've seen in the Arizona Fall League, or we saw in the Arizona Fall League rather, was, and we saw it towards the end of his time at Memphis as well, but he started shortening up his swing with two strikes. He would change his timing mechanism, his front foot timing mechanism, to maybe push the ball to the opposite field with two strikes, to be a more complete hitter with two strikes. And those are things that you don't always see from even your top of the line prospects. So I do think that this is a prospect who has sustained major league success in his future. One thing we've seen out of a lot of Cardinals prospects, and even dating back to Alan Craig, Alan Craig is like first week in the majors was really rough. Tommy Pham, his first taste of the majors was rough. Bader's had rough stretches. Tyler O'Neill's had rough stretches. Dylan Carlson's had rough stretches. Even guys who aren't on the team anymore that are now stars on other teams, they had rough stretches to begin with. But once he gets settled in, I do believe that there is a tremendous upside to go along with sustained major league success.
Kyle Reis with us. And by the way, because you were talking about his the quality of his at-bats and how he would go the other way, and very cognizant of how the pitchers were trying to work him, very cognizant of the game situation, really smart stuff. If you go to birdsontheblack.com, you can find when Kyle back in I think it was in October, did a breakdown of all the prospects. And he had Yepez in there, and he not only wrote about him and had some really good insight, but he also included a lot of video to kind of show you what he was talking about. So go back and look that up, because you're going to see seven or eight video examples of why the Cardinals are so excited about him. Now let me ask you this, Kyle. We have to play a little fantasy baseball here. Do you think, as you're looking at the 22 Cardinals as they are right now, do you think that if they are going to stay within the house, I mean, they're not going to sign Pujols, they're not going to sign Schwarber. If they stay within, does this guy profile as someone who deserves a pretty big opportunity at the designated hitter position?
Unless things have changed dramatically this offseason from where he left off in the Arizona Fall League, yes, I absolutely believe that. He would be my internal candidate. Of course, I would never be dismissive of whatever it would mean for Nolan Gorman or Brendan Donovan, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, he would have the upper hand, and not just because of the 40-man spot, but because I believe that he's deserved it.
Yeah, and here's a guy that started out last year Double-A, did really well, and they promoted him, where he played in Memphis enough. I think he had like 377 plate appearances, and he was even much better at Memphis than he was at Double-A. I mean, and then he went and, as you mentioned, he tore up the Arizona Fall League. So I think he's hey, I'd be really happy if the Cardinals went with a unofficial Yepez Gorman platoon. But the way the beauty, if Yepez is going to be the guy we think or we hope he's going to be, you don't have to worry about a platoon all that much. I mean, he looks like he's going to be able to handle right-handed pitching. Again, after the first trial and error part of his career, which is inevitable. But that's one of the reasons why I'd like to see the Cardinals jump in because the more experience these guys get, let's keep it at Juan. The more experience he gets at the major league level, the more he, makes his adjustments, goes through those so-called growing pains. But the more he plays, the sooner he'll realize his full potential, and then that's when they could have something really special. And do you think there's any kind of parallel? Not so much with their style of play, their position, their defense, their speed. I'm not talking about that. But do you see a parallel with Randy Arozarena in that respect? Overlooked guy. Cardinals probably didn't even realize what they had because Schilt didn't play him in 2020. But is there anything that harkens back to Randy A there?
I do. I think the thing that really comes to my mind is how Randy really started to tap into his power. Both his slug, we'll say, because that's probably the best way of putting it. He started to tap into his slug at Memphis. We would see him start to hit into it at Springfield, but it was like you could watch Randy become at the plate what we have seen him become in Tampa Bay, in Tampa rather. And that's that gap-to-gap hitter, that guy who can turn on a pitch and take it down the line, either line, depending on what the count is. A kid at the plate who you could tell is confident in his approach and doesn't doubt it. So yes, and also flying underneath the radar a little bit, especially with some flashier prospects ahead of them on the national scene.
Kyle Reis, do you have any? I love talking prospects. Do you have any so-called sleepers? And when I say sleepers, I maybe not projecting long range.
Yeah.
It's too early about this kid Baez, who I know Keith Law likes a lot, and the Cardinals have some guys like that. Whether we want to call them projects or figure out exactly who they are, or for the talent to rise in a way that makes them very, very viable. Maybe a Mason Wynn's an example of that, because the natural talent and skill is there. Everything's there. It's just got to put it together. But anyway, I'm talking about like a pretty near arrival time in the majors, whether it be at some point in 2022, maybe 2023. Who are some other guys you really like?
I think that if you're talking about a pitcher that could make an impact that maybe some people aren't talking about just yet, I think Andre Payante, the right-handed pitcher, fourth-round draft pick out of the 2019 draft. I think he pitched in the Arizona Fall League. I think he's going to be a prospect that the Cardinals are going to start talking about a little bit more, who in a traditional spring training would make an impact. And I just think that he's probably the guy that as you look at any top prospect list, he's probably the guy who's maybe towards the end of a top 20 or on the outside of a top 20 within the Cardinals, or in a 15 to 20, that probably makes a major league debut in 2022 if a major league season is played, and then also if there's some pitching issues along the way. I think he throws his fastball was clocked at 99 in the Arizona Fall League. That's not really common of him. He can get it up in a regular start to like 97, 98, but he lives in that 93 to 95 mile an hour range. He throws a slider and a curveball. Both of the pitches can be really good, and he can get lefties and righties out with both. And he dabbles with a changeup that I'd actually like to see him throw more, because I think it's good. I just don't think he has the confidence with it yet, at least in game in a minor league season. So Andre Payante is probably the one that is a starter at the minor league level that I could definitely see making a major league impact in 2022. And then, if we're talking again about the immediate future, I think that the two relief pitchers that were added to the 40-man roster, Freddie Pacheco and Jake Walsh, both have they both could make a great addition to the bullpen for different reasons. Like Pacheco throws the ball 100 miles an hour, and it's straight and it's hard to barrel up, and his slider is really good. The issue is sometimes his command gets wonky, especially if he doesn't get a lot of rest. That's usually when he's at his worst. But he's usually one of those isolated command issues where he won't have command for one appearance at all, and then he'll get a couple days of rest, and then he'll be back to throwing with good command. And then Jake Walsh is a righty, and Jake he has a big curve and a fastball that lives in the mid 90s, and he missed quite a bit of time in 2019 because of Tommy John surgery. 2020 was lost to him. 2021 he came in. He was the Cardinals organizational pitcher of the month in May, and then missed a great deal of time. Finished strong at Memphis. finished strong in the Arizona Fall League. And he has, like I said, the fastball curve combo. Even though he doesn't throw a fastball in the high 90s, it keeps hitters off balance. So, though, it's exciting to me that the Cardinals have pitching on the horizon, because to me, like, that's their biggest issue of need organizationally. And those would be the three guys as I ramble on. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. It's great. It's great. Yeah, those guys sound pretty exciting, and a lot of swing and miss stuff, right?
Yeah. Specifically with Pacheco. Pacheco struck out, I believe, 46 or 48% of the hitters that he faced in the 2021 season, which I'm not laughing for effect here. I'm laughing because every time I say it out loud, it actually makes me laugh because it's comically high. He does walk. His walk percentage is like 14%, which is too high. But again, watching him every day and putting GIFs online on Twitter every night, it's isolated incidents. It's like, when he's going to do it because he comes out of the gate. He does not throw anything near the plate, and they have to stick with him because, especially in 2021, most of the Cardinals pitching staff at the minor league level, just as much as the major league level, was gassed. So he'd have to try to work through it. And then once he got some rest, he was good. But yeah, all three of those guys, even though Payante hasn't really like hit his strikeout capability just yet, all three of those guys have it, and in spades as well.
Hey, one more thing for our friend Kyle Reis, again, from birdsontheblack.com, and follow him on Twitter at Kyler416, One more thing, because me trying to explain it, I would muck it up and just ramble on, so you can do it more efficiently. Where should people, you do podcasting, where should people find, what's the quickest way they should get to your podcast? What are the titles, and where should they go?
Yeah, we podcast through Birds on the Black. I have this stupid thing that I do every once in a while called Prospects After Dark, where I drink too much and ramble on like a jerk about anything that anybody wants to talk about. Usually it starts about prospects, and by the end of the night, which can be an hour later or an hour and a half later or 2 hours later, we're talking about, things that I could not even begin to talk about on this. So what I would tell people to do is go to iTunes, look for Birds on the Black. It's not just me. We have an incredible group at Birds on the Black now. With there's a podcast called Chirps with Alex Crisafulli and Tara Wellman. That's awesome. Ben Cerruti has kind of taken over for Zach Gifford, and everyone knows Zach, but
right.
Kind of taken over for Zach Gifford, doing a lot of the advanced analytics stuff, doing his own podcast. And, look for Birds on the Black. And I appreciate you telling these people to follow me, Bernie, but do not tell these people to follow me. I am the worst follow. I work very blue. I would tell them to follow at Cardinals Gifts or at C70, or follow Bernie if you're not doing it already.
No, that's good. At C70 is great too. I mean, they're all great. At Cardinals Gifts, great too. So I'm a big fan. I haven't met you personally, and I haven't met some of the other people you alluded to, but I've been following them a long time. And Alex and Tara and Zach, of course, before that. And I don't want to leave any. Oh, Ben Cerruti. Great stuff, man. So, I'm a fan, and I appreciate you giving us some time tonight. And we will be calling you again. We'll track you down. We're going to hunt you down again and make you talk on live radio. So,
well, Bernie, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. And
you got it, man. No, you got it. No, thank you. I learned from you, so I appreciate it very much. That is Kyle Reis, and I hope you feel better too. By the way, that's terrible, like sinus infection or pain in the. Well, I'll say a pain in the nose, but I hope you feel better soon. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
That's our guy, Kyle Reis. He's good. Love his enthusiasm, love his knowledge. He plays hurt. I like that. But he knew all about Juan Yepez, and he. This is not a hype guy. He's got a level-headed approach to things, but he does show his enthusiasm, which is good when he's fired up about a particular prospect. And. I like him. I just like the way the things that he has told us, people that read him, about Juan Yepez. It just adds to the reasons why this is a guy that we should embrace, and a guy that has a chance to be I think a really special major league hitter. And I'm of the mindset the sooner the better, because the sooner you get him up here, Jim Hewer, and the sooner you just let them loose. And you know that there's going to be, some tough times early, almost invariably. And not everybody can be Albert Pujols 2001, but the sooner you get that out of the way, then the sooner you get to the great stuff. And so, and I think, I really think that's the way they got to go. I don't think they're going to spend money on a designated hitter. I don't think they're going to go outside. You and I have had this conversation a lot. I mean, can I rule out they sign somebody on a one-year deal? Let me put it this way. Like, Rick Hummel doesn't rule that out, so I'm not going to rule it out. But the thing to remember is that, they have the designated hitter, and they have a lot of talent coming back. And don't laugh. They do have a lot of talent coming back because the final 3 months of the season, this was a top 5 offense in the major leagues. And they have their top hitters coming back. They have, when you look at, how do I explain this without rambling? The case for, and I wrote something, by the way, about this at scoopswithdannymac.com. People want to see it. The case for bringing Albert Pujols back is basically limited to one thing, which is he's really good against left-handed pitching. You do not want to play Albert. I hate to say this. You do not want to play Albert unless it's a situation you have no choice, or you just want to give him a spot start at first base. You cannot play him against right-handed pitching. And people would say, okay, Bernie, well, why is that? Well, let me put it to you this way. He, since 2017, he's the equivalent against right-handed pitchers. He's the equivalent of what Brendan Ryan gave the Cardinals against right-handed pitchers. And last season, he had a 500 OPS against right-handed pitchers, and he had a lot of at-bats. His OPS against right-handed pitchers, you remember how bad, bless his heart, Pete Cosmo was as a hitter in 2013? Just horrific numbers, right? Albert Pujols' OPS against right-handed pitchers last season was 54 points less than Pete Cosmo's OPS against right-handed pitchers in 2013. 54 points less.
It's pretty rough.
So as much as we all love Albert, you got to be realistic about this. Okay, so what are we getting into then? Okay, what would justify signing him other than the fact that it would be a lot of fun and certainly would be cool to see him end his career as a Cardinal. And, yeah, he's a great clubhouse guy and all that. I get it. But in terms of, like, his work, in terms of, like, real productivity, it would be limited to facing left-handed pitchers. And here's the issue with this, and those of you who listen to me closely, you know where I'm going with this. Over the last 3 years, including last season, the percentage of plate appearances the Cardinals took against left-handed pitching, 20%, only 20%. They don't face left-handed pitching that much, starter or reliever. And when they do, this is a really important part, when they do, that is one of their team's strengths. They have a bunch of guys who just pound left-handed pitching. The Cardinals, I looked it up today, had the highest slugging percentage in Major League Baseball against left-handed pitching last year, and they were like number 3 in OPS. Like, in other words, you say, well, you could bring Albert in to go up against left-handed pitching, blah, blah, blah. Oddly enough, they don't need that. That's like an area where they're all set because they have 7 lineup regulars coming back in 2022 who will play a lot and who were all above average against left-handed pitchers last year. Some astronomically so, some like Bader, who were above average, but it wasn't like a huge number. But some of the numbers were huge. So what exactly would Albert Pujols do? It sounds good in theory, but when you actually sort of break it down, so you just can't give him a lot of at-bats against right-handed pitching. It's just ridiculous to even suggest that they would do something like that. The numbers are awful. They're just flat out awful. And they have been for years. And the one thing he does do, he hits left-handed pitching well. Okay, great. But they're all good there. They got plenty of guys that just pound left-handed pitching. So there's not a glaring need at that spot. And my opinion, Jim, is I would much rather see that cultivate a couple of young guys who are going to be a huge part of their future. The sooner the better. The sooner they'll get to where they're going to go as far as their potential for hitting in the big leagues.
The Yepez Gorman combo, whatever we want to call that, if these guys can hit, let them play. I'm there with you on the Pujols thing as much as I'd love to see number 5 one more year out of Busch Stadium. It'd be awesome, but the juice almost isn't worth the squeeze with this thing. Then
right.
The splits there that you just point out, that's the main reason there. There's just not enough left-handed pitching at bats available. And then you throw in the fact, well, that's not really the problem. The problem is hitting right-handed pitching for this team, and they need to find that. If Yepez can hit right-handed pitching, then he plays. That's the way I look at it. Or if it's Gorman, he plays. Whichever guy hits will play in that DH position. And it's not going to be Albert against right-handed pitching. So as much as I would love that opportunity, it's realistically, from a business point of making the team better, I don't see where it makes the team better.
That's exactly right. And we can talk about intangibles, and they're there.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm just one of my favorite words. Here I go again. I'm just very pragmatic about this. And I had someone ask me today, and it's a good question. I mean, natural questions along the lines of like, well, okay, he would only start at DH against left-handed pitching, but what about a pinch hitter? You got to have a pinch hitter in there late in the game and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. That's actually a great follow-up question. What the Cardinals have now, and frankly, I don't think it's going to change hardly at all, if it changes at all, because, again, people got to wrap their minds around the idea that they have a lot of good hitters coming back, a lot of good hitters who made the Cardinals as a team very, very good over the final 3 months in terms of offense, although July wasn't June was a little quiet, but that's when they kind of started. Well, actually, I should say July was a little quiet. But that's when they actually started. It was like after the All-Star break, it really started to cook. But Albert is a pinch hitter. If you look at their projected bench, right, as they have it now, it's all a bunch of right-handed hitters except for Lars Nootbaar. So the point being, well, what if they bring a left-hander in? You need some pinch hitters. Yeah, pretty much everyone on the bench is a right-handed pitch hitter, So, and once again, the Cardinals were fantastic against lefties last year. Left-handed starting pitchers, when they faced the Cardinals last season, no matter who they pitched for, left-handed starting pitchers against St. Louis had a 5.01 ERA. Left-handed relievers against St. Louis last year had a 4.97 ERA. So, again, the Cardinals do not have a glaring need to do something against left-handed pitching. That is one of their absolute team strengths. So the very reason people would make a case for Albert, and again, this is only baseball we're talking about. The very case they would build is sort of based on a bit of a false premise. Oh, but he'd come in and what he could do against left-handed. They got enough of guys that do that stuff. And then you got he's very limited defensively. His base running metrics are, I won't even, it's weird because I don't even like to talk about like the bad numbers. I don't. Mm-hmm. I respect this man so much, but the base running metrics are like, So, like I said in this piece that I wrote, I'll say it now. I'm a fan. And if Bill DeWitt and John Mozeliak decide they want to bring, Albert back to be part of a last hurrah with Molina and Wainwright, I'm a fan. You don't think that I'll sit back and enjoy it just for the spectacle and the entertainment value? Of course. But does it make sense baseball-wise? Not really. Sorry, but it just doesn't. Anyway.
The main, we're going to get to a break here, but the main reason it makes sense is if they have to sell tickets.
That's right.
And that's not a bad thing. But
it moved the needle.
Part of it, yeah.
If they had to sell tickets and they do that, that's great. But I still hope the manager hardly ever uses them against right-handed pitching. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
You know, because at some point you got to declare what the priority is, right?
Yep. No doubt about that.
It'll be this will all be very interesting to see how it plays out.